Hello! Today I'm going to be showing you how you can change your product positions in your collections in bulk using the Matrixify app. So let's get started. Here I have two collections. So I have Buzz and Bloom and Everything Honey. Now there is a difference between these two collections. One of these collections is a smart collection, which means products are added to the collection based on different rules. So in the case of Everything Honey, products will be added to this collection if they have the tag on sale and large. And I also have a second collection, Buzz and Bloom. However, this collection is a manual collection or custom collection where products are manually added to this collection, so it's not based on rules and conditions. When it comes to changing product positions within a collection though, it is exactly the same for both collection types. So I'll walk you through how you can update product positions in both of these collection types using the Matrixify app. Now we first need to start off by heading to the Matrixify app. So that's what I'm going to do now. Here I am in the Matrixify app, and we first need to start off by exporting our collection. So to do so, click on the New Export button, which will open a new export page for you. Now we'll first look at the format. If you're not exporting a large amount of data, we do recommend exporting in the Matrixify Excel format. However, if you are exporting data that would be over the Excel limits, then you would need to export in the CSV format. However, we do recommend Excel because it tends to be a lot easier to work with and a lot less likely to break. So that's what I'm also going to do in this case. I'm going to select the Matrixify Excel format. Then moving down to Sheets. Now for Sheets, we need to select to export Custom Collections and Smart Collections. To do so, click on the Select Sheets drop-down, and here we'll need to select to export Smart Collections and Custom Collections. In my case, I have already selected, so I'm just going to unselect that and then select to export Smart Collections and Custom Collections. Now we need to select which column groups we'd like to export. To do so, click on the Smart Collections drop-down, and here you'll see different column groups. For what we would like to do, we need the collection group basic columns, we do not need rules, we do need to select linked products, we do not need products count or meta fields. Then we can further refine our export by selecting only the minimum required columns for the update that we would like to do. So to do so, click on the basic columns drop down, and here we would need to select ID, handle, command, and sort order. For linked products, we can leave all of these checkboxes checked, as these are all the columns that we do require for linked products for such an update. Then moving down to custom collections. For custom collections, we also need basic columns and linked products. These are the only two checkboxes that you need to select, and then again further refining the export by selecting to export only the minimum required columns, which in this case would also be ID, handle, command, and sort order. For linked products, we also need to leave all of these checkboxes checked, as these are also necessary for the update. Now you can also add a filter for both your smart collections and your custom collections. Filters allow you to filter out only specific collections that you would like to update. In my case though, I do only have one smart collection and one custom collection, so I will not be adding a filter, but just so you know, adding filters is an option to export only specific collections, and I will also leave a link to all of the filters that we offer for both smart collections and custom collections in the description of this video, so that you can easily get to it and understand how each filter works and what their values should be. You do not need to change any of the export options for this export. The default ones will work exactly as we need them to. And if all looks good and as it should, we can go ahead and press export. You'll then be able to see the collections exporting. And once exported, go ahead and press the download exported file button. You'll then see your file exported. Click on it to open it, so we can now start editing our data. Here I am in my exported file. Now you'll be able to see that this file contains 3 sheets or tabs. So we have our Smart Collections sheet, then we have Custom Collections, and then an export summary, which is basically all the information about the export itself. Now we can leave the export summary sheet alone, we don't need to touch it. You can also remove it from the file if you would like, but in my case I'm going to leave it because it really doesn't make a difference. But now heading back to the first sheet in the file, which is Smart Collections. Now I'll go through each of the columns in the file, what they mean, what you need to change, what you don't need to change, and then how to change the product position within the collection. So starting off with ID and handle. These are two columns which basically identify the collection that we're going to be updating. You do not need to touch these columns at all, leave them as they are. This is how the app is going to find the collection. Then moving on to the command column. Now the default exported value for the command column is merge. Now this is exactly what we need for this type of import, so we're going to leave the command column value as is, which is merge. You don't need to touch that at all. And then moving on to sort order. Now Shopify only allows us to change the product position for collections that have the sort order manual. If the collection has a sort order which is anything other than manual, for example best-selling, you won't be able to set the product position. So it's very important that the sort order column has the value manual. So we're going to do that now. So just change the value from whatever it currently is to manual to then be able to change the product position. So I'm going to go and do that now. So manual. Now you can either leave the first row with this value or fill the value for all rows. It doesn't make a difference. But in my case, I'm going to add the value for all rows. And now moving on to the product columns in the file. So we have a total of 3 product columns. So we have product ID, product handle, and product position. Product ID and product handle is how the app identifies the product within the collection. These are values that you don't need to change, so you can leave those columns as they are. The only column that we're going to be editing in this case is the product position column. And here we're going to add the positions of the products. Now, the way that the products are currently listed in this exported file is the exact same way they look in our Shopify admin. And this is what it currently looks like in our Shopify admin as well. Now, what I would want to do with this import is I'd want Honeypot to be the first product in this collection. So to do so, I'm going to add the product position 1. This will tell the app that I want this product to be the first product in my collection. Now, something to note is that if you only need to change some positions of some products, you can import only those positions. So you don't need to list any other product in the file other than the product positions that you would like to change. So in my case, for example, if I just want to move one product to be the first product in the collection, I only need to import that product row with that product position for that collection. I've now added the product position 1 for the product Honeypot, which I want to be the first product in the collection. And I'm going to remove these are the rows. And what will happen now is those are the products that I've removed from the file won't be deleted from the collection. It will just mean that Honeypot as a product will be the first product listed for that collection, as it now has product position 1. And now moving on to custom collections. And for custom collections, it would be the exact same idea as it was for smart collections. You don't need to touch ID, handle, or command. You can leave them as they are. The sort order must be manual instead of anything else, so make sure to add that as a value. You don't need to change product ID or product handle, as again, that is how the app identifies the product in the collection. And here we can then change our product positions. And here again, the products have been exported in the order they currently are in your Shopify admin, but I would like to change that. So I am now going to add different product positions for these products. So I will go ahead and do that now. I'll add Bee Jam to be first. Then I want Honeypot to be second, Bee Butter to be third, Bee Rings to be fourth, and lastly, Bee T-shirts to be in 5th position. You don't need to change the product's command column. You can leave that as is. And that really would be it in regards to changing product positions for your collections. We can now go ahead and save our file. Now you can really save your file as anything. However, in my case, I'm going to save my file as product position change. However, you can name your file anything you would like to name it, but in my case, yes, I'm going to be naming it product position change. So once that has been saved, we can then head back to the Matrixify app to import our file. Here I am in the Matrixify app, and this is where we're going to be importing the file that we have just edited and saved. So to do so, press Add File, select the file that we've just saved, and you can either drag and drop it into the app or you can press Open, whichever you find easiest. You'll then see the file uploading and analysing. And once analysed, you should be able to see that the app has correctly identified that your file contains both smart collections or custom collections, or just smart collections or just custom collections, depending on the collections that you are updating. You'll also see an ignored export summary column if you did decide to keep that sheet in your file. That's completely all right. The app, as it says, will just ignore it. It won't make a difference. Then make sure that the app has correctly identified the total count of your collections in your file. In my case, I'm importing only one collection for both smart collections and custom collections. However, in your case, you may have more collections, so just make sure that total is correct. And you do not need to change any of the import options. The default ones will work exactly as we need them to. And if all looks good, and as it should, we can then go ahead and press import. You'll then see the file importing. And as you can see, both of my collections have successfully been updated. And if we head to our collections in our Shopify admin, we'll now be able to see that Honeypot is the first product in our collection, which is exactly what we were looking to do and what we wanted. And then if we go to our Buzz and Bloom collection, we'll be able to see our product sorted exactly with the positions that we had listed in our file as well. That really would be it. That is how you can update your product positions in bulk within your collections using the Matrixify app. We do also offer a written tutorial on this topic as well, which goes through all the steps I've just gone through in the video, but in written format, and I will leave a link in the description to that tutorial as well, so you can also get to the written tutorial if you find it easier to follow a written tutorial rather than a video. And if you have any queries, questions or concerns, or if you run into any trouble at all, please do not hesitate to reach out to us and let us know. We will be more than happy to help. You can reach us via Slack, where we have our AI assistant Mybar who will help, and if needed, our support team will also jump in to help. You can also reach us via email at support@matrixify.app. And we also offer a great in-app chat as well with our AI support assistant Mybar, which will give you answers to your questions or queries, concerns in real time. But other than that, that would be it from me today. And that is how you can bulk update your product positions in your collections in Shopify using the Matrixify app.